It's been a while since we've talked about the Touch Bar on the MacBook Pro, and it's coming up on 4 years old. That's right, initially unveiled way back in 2016, and if you watch my videos on the Touch Bar way back when, I had a very different vision for the future of MacBooks to what they have turned into today. So I thought it might be fun to kind of revisit that subject and talk about what the future of the Touch Bar is, and could it be Apple's next 3D Touch? Let's begin. So, the reason I feel this way is because I've seen a lot of people online be fairly vocal about their disinterest in the Touch Bar. They prefer physical keys, they don't like the added complexity the Touch Bar adds, and while I haven't experienced this myself personally, there's been several YouTubers or users out there that say it freezes on them, it crashes on them, and suddenly they can't use it. So I'm sad to say I can't really reflect that. I have used the Touch Bar pretty extensively whenever I had a MacBook with the Touch Bar. At my current state, I don't have one, but I had a 15-inch MacBook Pro from 2016 for about 2 years, and then after that I had a 13-inch MacBook Pro for about a year, so I have some pretty prolonged experience with it, and I thought it was cool, but I just wanted to see Apple do more with it. In fact, if you watch some of my way older videos, I thought this was a teaser for how touch displays on Macs were going to be in the future, and eventually Apple was just going to cover the entire keyboard with a touch display and move towards virtual typing. I had a lot of stupid ideas when I was younger, okay? I also believed dragons were real at a certain age. What age I will say that is, I will not disclose, but obviously that's not the direction Apple took it in. So at the time I was making those videos, I was exclusively using my iPad Pro for video editing, and I typed a lot with a virtual keyboard, and I was comfortable with it. So I thought Apple, with the butterfly keyboard, you know, very thin, very little taptic feedback, very little travel, I thought Apple was trying to get people used to not having that physical feedback and try to get people more comfortable with the idea of virtual keys replacing physical keys for more and more tasks. The reason that theory and that idea did not come to fruition is because Apple has proved they're very okay with providing physical keys with travel for even the iPad and of course the MacBook. So now, you know, we have the Magic Keyboard with our iPad because obviously Apple saw a lot of people like having physical keys that they can physically feel and push down, so they brought that to a touch dominant interface, and we've had keyboards for the iPad for many years now. And also Apple has completely killed off the butterfly keyboard in favor of the more traditional Magic Keyboard design, so that you can again have a more tactile feel, it's quieter, and also get more travel out of those keys that we experience in both the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro today. And also in previous years I thought that the Touch Bar might become more of a standard feature. You know, I was really hoping when they first unveiled it that eventually they could come around and start bringing Touch Bars to Magic Keyboards that you could dock with your iMac. And I know they would need to be charged a lot more often. Obviously adding an OLED display to a keyboard is going to use a lot more power, and Touch ID would add to the price, but we've already seen Apple's kind of okay with charging $300 for a keyboard accessory. So I would be a big fan if they did it, but I don't think they're going to. And you know, they haven't brought the Touch Bar to the MacBook Air despite the Touch Bar being around for a long time, and there's definitely no leaks or rumors suggesting Apple is bringing the Touch Bar to more and more Macs, and it kind of distorts the Mac in a lot of ways, because obviously you can't use the Touch Bar on any desktop, you can't use it on the Mac Pro, you can't use it on the iMacs, and of course you can't use it on the MacBook Air, so it's definitely a Pro type feature that only MacBook Pro users can utilize, and that kind of makes it awkward to develop for, because you can't design any applications or programs in an exclusive way that takes advantage of the Touch Bar, because of course it's not available for every single Mac, and it also added quite a bit to the overall cost of the MacBook Pro. It's why a lot of people might go forward with the MacBook Air even if the thermal limitations aren't as great, because it's much cheaper and you get those 10th generation Intel CPUs. I know the performance isn't as great as the entry-level MacBook Pros, but that Touch Bar does add to the overall cost in a very similar way that the Force Touch layers in the iPhones added a lot to the cost. They made iPhones more expensive to manufacture, and I'm sure Apple Watches too, and we're probably going to remove Force Touch in the next generation Apple Watches. So it makes me wonder if, due to user feedback and developers not really taking huge advantage of the Touch Bar, could Apple see the Touch Bar as kind of the next thing to cut costs on and be like, you know what, people don't really like this very much. We tried it, we pushed for it for, 4 to 5 years, but ultimately people just want us to go back to having regular keys. And Apple does occasionally move backwards on things like that. They introduce something and they don't get much positive feedback on it, so they pull it out of the product. And we saw that with the butterfly keyboard. We saw that with the thinness of the 15-inch MacBook Pro. People actually got pretty happy when they made the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which was thicker, wider, heavier, but it had those deeper keys, it had the escape key people wanted, and a lot better thermals on the the inside because of that bulkier design. So if you want to know what I personally want, I don't want it to go away. I really like the touch bar, and I still stand by the idea of a Magic Keyboard accessory that you could use with an iMac or a Mac Pro that has a touch bar on it, mainly because I love the slider. I much prefer changing the volume by swiping back and forth, or changing display brightness by swiping back and forth instead of having to rapidly press a button over and over again. That's what I have to do now, and it kind of sucks, but maybe the touch bar is simply just too expensive of a solution to not that big of a problem. And this is another small problem, but I think the touch bar is great at solving, is the predictive text. I love when I'm texting people on my Mac. Back when I had the touch bar, it would show me how to spell something if I wasn't exactly sure, or I could text a little faster. If big words showed up on the touch bar, I could just tap them just like I do on my iPhone with predictive text. Always thought that was cool, as well as the emoji support. As we're using more and more emojis on our iPads and iPhones, it's much easier to use them on the Mac if you have that touch bar, and you can just one tap away start adding your most frequently used emojis to whether you're commenting, tweeting. I thought it was pretty handy, and I know that they're not super productivity based features. You know, when Apple first unveiled the touch bar, I think a lot more people were expecting developers to do more creative things like color switching and scrolling through timelines with the touch bar and that kind of thing, but never really formulated into anything super concrete. But personally, similar to my thoughts on 3D Touch back when they were talking about removing that, I don't want it to go away. I kind of enjoy having the touch bar on certain Macs, even though I don't have one with it right now. I hope that they can find ways of manufacturing it cheaper so that they can bring it to more Macs in the future. But again, this is not a news video. This is not a leak or a rumor. There's no rumor going around that Apple's considering removing it, and there's no leak going around suggesting that they want to bring it to more machines. I just want to voice my opinion on the fact that it's handy. I appreciate bringing a lot of things that I can do on my phone and iPad to the Mac keyboard, and if you let me do that with my desktops, Apple, I would be happy spending absurd amounts of money that people would make fun of me for, just so that I could have predictive text, the sliders for volume, display brightness, as well as the ease of bringing up emojis and selecting them much easier. It's just cool to have touch panels and a more customizable keyboard feel on that part of the device. But again, I haven't experienced the bugs and the crashes that other people have experienced, and I haven't run into a bunch of situations where having the touch bar was a limitation, whereas I've heard from other people in the community that it has been a severe limitation for them. So best case scenario, Apple, could you just make both? I know you probably don't feel like doing that, but if it was optional at checkout or something like that, if you could buy the MacBook Pro without a touch bar and save a couple $100, I think a lot of people would go with it. But there's also people like me that would love to have the touch bar on the MacBook Pro stay, and in fact bring it to other machines like the MacBook Air. Perhaps because they're switching to Apple Silicon, they can save some money and bring those types of features to cheaper MacBooks. Just a theory, just a suggestion, no evidence to go along that that's actually happening, but I feel like we don't talk that much about the touch bar, so wanted to update my thoughts on it, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on the touch bar. Feel free to hit me up over on Twitter, join my Discord, and let me know if you love or hate it, or whatever. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.